Chapter 29, Donovan. Page 268, note, besides the examples in this chapter, Donovan also assisted with other Beatles songs. He shared ideas for lines, played instruments and occasionally sang backup, especially on the White Album, for which George Martin did not provide material direction or session musicians that were standard with earlier albums. Page 270. Note, the slang terms dip and dope have evolved. The term dip has become more hostile, such as in dipshit. In the 60s it was friendlier, but referred to someone gullible or lacking intelligence. A dope was a stupid person. Additionally, dope was and is still slang for drugs. In the 1970s, after Richard Nixon made many criminal organizations wealthy by launching his war on drugs, there was an anti-drug slogan: only dopes use dope. A person who abused drugs was labeled a dope fiend or simply a dope. However, since the 1980s, dope has taken on a positive meaning. Those born since then sometimes call something dope to mean that it is excellent. William objected to being called a dip or a dope. Page 273. Note, the line, "I get high with a little help from my friends," predictably resulted in the BBC banning the song for its drug reference. With that same concern, the BBC also banned, on the same Sgt. Pepper's album, "Fixing a Hole, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and a Day in the Life." As premeditated, the cooperating media helped the world contemplate the government attempting to block the Beatles from encouraging fans to use drugs. Naturally, after the fans' initial shock of being told that their idols encouraged drug use, most Beatles fans sided with the band, objecting to those who would prevent Beatles airplay. With the media and government support, many people tried drugs because of that strong celebrity endorsement. Publicity from the band also boosted album sales. When choosing sides between a conservative government and the drug culture, even those with no interest in drugs are generally more inclined to stand with their rock icons than with those who would repress them. Consciously and subconsciously, with the reception of Sgt. Pepper's, millions of people suddenly opposed those who opposed drugs. Banning those four songs placed the Beatles at the top of the drug-favouring counterculture. Although since their first engineered hit, the Beatles were already bigger than life, the government's interference with their music made them unimaginably larger to the world. It also turned fans against their governments, siding with the Beatles now against the state. Many fans took drugs as their initiation into the Beatles' counterculture. William recycled the phrase, "I get high," from "I Want to Hold Your Hand," which was one of the first of many songs written for the Beatles and credited to Lennon and McCartney, at the start protecting their wholesome starter image and keeping the song from being banned by the BBC. The phrase was muffled by a light overdub of the phrase, "I can't hide," many, who did not know the official lyrics, misheard the true lyrics. Others received that covert drug reference as subliminal programming that would not be activated until the Beatles repeated that message overtly. In Billy Pepper and the Pepperpots' 1963 recording of "I Want to Hold Your Hand," released on Mezzimania in 1964, the lines are, "It's such a feeling that my love, I got high, I got high, I got high, I got high." When confronted with the rumour that Billy Shepherd and Jimmy Fraser wrote "I Want to Hold Your Hand," and the Pepperpots originally recorded it to help George Martin teach it to the Beatles, Williams said that's an early Lennon-McCartney song. George's change in the lyrics from "I got high" to "I get high" made the song more present. He also made other improvements. That's the way with George, whatever he worked on, he made it better. Page 275. Note, some people have imagined William had all of the surgical work done in a single trip to one doctor and then returned with Paul's face. However, as chronicled by photographs over the first few years, William's transformation was brought about by a series of less radical surgeries, some as simple as adding blemishes such as a scar on his chin. Fans have pointed to a scar or other blemishes as proof that William is Paul, but missed the fact that those blemishes came with time. They are missing in William's early Paul pictures. The chin scar had to be done twice. Injected fillers were originally intended to occur every 6 months, but were less frequent in actual practice. William found reasons to put it off. He complained that the extra thickness in his cheeks, besides feeling unnatural to him, interfered with his singing. The injections became rare, starting in the Wings era, when the primary person pressing for injections passed away. In the 70s, rather than injections, William created facial variations with latex experimentation. Sometimes in the same music video, he uses subtle adjustments that almost make him seem like different people. Although broadening his appearance has PID implications, it also reflects William's pleasure in dressing up, his interpretation of a song, or setting a song's mood. When watching his music videos, consider how his altered appearance for specific song reinforces the lyrics mode, the lyrics, music, or mood of that song. Page 277. Note, here again, compare page 70. Paul is pushing up rhododendrons rather than daisies. Within the 60s, 70s counterculture, daisies in all their simplicity were associated with open quote, flower power, close quote. For many, the daisies seemed to be the flower of the movement. However, pushers were not pushing daisies. The flower they pushed up was marijuana. Marijuana, as explained later, is the flower or of flower power. The herb is a hallucinogenic plant medicine. Since prehistory, hallucinogens, especially psilocybin mushrooms, contributed to social evolution. With the threat of hallucinogens, humanity out of their easily controlled social structures, many governments outlawed their use. Yet even where most beneficial hallucinogens are still outlawed, mad honey is generally legal. Try it if your doctor approves. It is delicious. Bees naturally produce it from rhododendrons. Mad rhododendron thus joins the mysticism and effects of hallucinogens with the Masonic significance of bees and beehives, cromlechs. Some readers have found Paul through psychedelics. Have you? Page 278. Note, Donovan, whom Bob Dylan had introduced to the Beatles, entwined his spiritual journey with theirs. Together, especially with George and Pattie Boyd Harrison, Donovan frequently discussed meditation and other spiritual practices, ideas and intentions. He was part of all of it. In 1968, Donovan was among the group of friends that accompanied the Beatles to the ashram in India, where Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who had devised Transcendental Meditation TM, them to teach it to others. In 2009, Paul and Ringo, backed by Donovan, joined other celebrities in New York City in a benefit concert for the David Lynch Foundation. The goal was to collect enough money to teach TM to 1 million at-risk students. Besides raising funds, the concert resulted in many Beatles fans learning TM, Transcendental Meditation, and making the abandoned ashram a Beatles tourist site. Due to those visits, the ashram reopened and was eventually renamed Beatles Ashram. In 2021, on Donovan's 75th birthday, he released I'm the Shaman, a song produced by David Lynch, who also directed his music video. In it, Donovan employs hypnotic techniques, Raoul repeating that he is the shaman, not merely a shaman. At the end of the video, donations are solicited to teach TM to more students. Page 280. Note, William had an experience that triggered an early childhood trauma. Upon investigation, he learned that it was a German method of ritualistic abuse that caused dissociation. Part of the script was to be the greatest star in service to music. Upon further investigation, as one memory led to another, he learned that the abuse evolved to more closely resemble monarch programming. The monarch butterfly symbolizes the trauma-based mind control system. William's childhood traumas put his life and work into perspective. It explains his extraordinary drive ever since his program was fully activated to be Paul McCartney, the greatest star. Some readers are put off by William proving that he was not only the best Paul McCartney, but also the greatest star of all time. However, that was his program. By identifying with the sadistically programmed role, William's existence requires that the program be true. It is not as though he would receive external punishment for failing to fulfill that role. The integral, tormenting punisher is entirely eternal. Failure triggers severe depression, which he has tried to drink away. He must be on top. In the memoirs, William laments the heavy burden of living as Paul. From an outsider's view, it is inconceivable that the poor billionaire super celebrity has cause to whine. After all, most of his relatives and closest friends were fully aware of his new role and were supportive. For William, however, the life that he lost was not one of their associations. It was his life before his internal trauma-based program became fully activated. Once it was switched on, his life beyond work largely ended. Although he worked to maintain a playful element, such as while playing his Vivian Stanshall role, he could never fully return to his authentic, peaceful nature. Even when playing his service to music program runs in the background, by understanding William's position, we also better understand countless others. He is not alone. To fulfill the ruling elite's agenda, they dramatically program many children to eventually step into key positions. The entertainment industry's power to shape opinion makes a celebrity control particularly important. Replacing many of them with program workers is an effective way to govern the masses. Understanding how replacements qualify for celebrity roles should stir compassion for all whose lives are set that way. They are not robots. They are individuals with personal struggles, just as we would not judge soldiers with PTSD. It is unfair to be overly critical of those who act according to their ritualistic trauma-based programming. Developed through extensive scientific experimentation, mind control programming is extremely difficult to break. Chapter 30, Penny Nichols, Diane Lyne and Penny Lane, page 282. Page 283, note, William is being coy about his involvement with Denny Lane and the Diplomats, wanting readers to figure it out for themselves. He speaks of the band as if detached from it, but then explains how the addition of Nicky James changed things and how it inspired him to use an Elvis-type voice for Lady Madonna. For those who missed that clue, he becomes more obvious. However, he sees his work with the Diplomats and the band before it as training exercises, not as accomplishments. They were part of his education, not something to list on a resume. William's ability to mimic the style and voices of other musicians is part of why his music is so versatile and why it has been such a wide appeal. Tapping into Elvis's energy for Lady Madonna was not to have his fans recognize the Elvis influence, but was calculated to transfer Elvis's followers to the new king. That use of his energy was less flagrant than the Lennon-McCartney writing team's earlier use of Elvis lyrics. Elvis saying, "I'd rather see you dead, little girl, than to be with another man, baby, let's play house." Well before John saying those lines in Run for Your Life. Page 290. Note, in retrospect, it is difficult to remember or comprehend the prevailing narrow-minded intolerance of 1964 when the Beatles were launched on the unsuspecting American public. The fact that we can scarcely imagine it now is a testament to that social engineering success. The Beatles' mop-top haircuts, along with other marks of rebellion, were intended to offend the older generation. It worked. The elders rejected the new idols, driving the youth to reject their would-be stabilizing elders. By dividing the generations, freeing the world of their nourishing roots, those targeted were free to discover and embrace the artificially generated pro-drug youth movement that was taught to not trust anyone over 30, even though those who set up the scheme were considerably older. The Beatles were conservative enough for wide acceptance by all except the squares who were seen as too old to know anything. Bands immediately followed the more blatant rebellion, and with so much longer hair that the Beatles' original mop-tops were soon seen as conservative. In the text, William jokingly laughs at the idea of the Penny Lane barber cutting the Beatles' hair. Actually, their original mop-tops were kept neatly trimmed. Their meticulously controlled image required regular haircuts. For the sake of the song, they did each receive a haircut from the barber, who did indeed display their photographs. However, the barber did not, as William's joke suggested, validate their intended image. Page 292, note, Saul of Tarsus, a Roman Pharisee who becomes known as Paul the Apostle, begins with an urgency to eradicate Christianity. He first appears in the Bible as a young man at the stoning of Stephen, Acts 7:58. As an adult, he captures and transports Christians to have them killed, until one day in Damascus he arrives with an amazing story. Rather than picking up Christian prisoners as expected, he reports having miraculously become a disciple of Jesus, 9:1-9:2-3-3:11. If Saul was truthful, Jesus, now resurrected, worked through him to change and expand Christianity. However, not all Christians were convinced. When he went to Jerusalem, for example, the disciples were all afraid and did not believe him, 9:26. The zealous Pharisee had already shown that he could not be trusted and that he would destroy Christianity if possible. After years of making Christian reforms, Saul Paul, like a double agent, still called himself a Pharisee when it suited him. Brothers, I am a Pharisee, 23:6. In Christian Paulism, Paul, who eventually lost his head, built upon the Gospels, mixing Christianity with concepts of other religions to reach a wider audience. Much of his New Testament writing is brilliant. Nonetheless, some critics argue, however impressive it may be, it is not Christian. Pauline Christianity, consisting of biblical Christian doctrine that Jesus did not teach, is seen by some as a corruption of true Christianity. Those changes paved the way for Satanism and other infusions built upon Roman paganism. New Age Paulism, with its own Paul, whose head was wounded to death, breaks the stronghold of modern Christianity, replacing it with a modern pagan movement. When modern Paulism began, pagans were statistically insignificant in what we termed Christian nations. Now, as Christianity shrinks, neo-paganism, especially witchcraft, is on the rise to be as forever mainstream.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.